Tonight, order to stand down. Train operators told they can't help people in distress on the tracks. A CTV News exclusive. Forced to stall when seconds count.
The concern is that somebody might die.
Employees speaking out.
I'm voting now. How much more voting can I get?
The Conservative leader has simply no plan.
Will he at least allow Canadians to heat their homes without his tax?
Parliament returns with a clash over affordability and the carbon tax. Also, reports of an air defense mix-up before a deadly drone attack killing U.S. soldiers. Plus, the cold case arrest after a 17-year investigation that spanned Western Canada. And a superstar's Super Bowl dilemma. Taylor Swift's time zone shuffle to touchdown before kickoff.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina.
Good evening, everyone. We begin tonight with exclusive details of a policy change. Employees of a regional transit service in Ontario say requires them not to assist in the way they want when a pedestrian has been struck, derailing their ability to help. CTV's Adrian Gabriel on what they're calling a puzzling and potentially troubling change.
It's a tragic, on-the-job reality for train operators.
There was no doubt in that situation that the person we struck had died.
And now when a GO train in Ontario collides with a pedestrian on the tracks, operating staff on board aren't allowed to leave the locomotive to assist. The new policy is being enforced by Alstom, the multinational company that employs all GO train operators.
The concern is that somebody might die. Our members have first aid training. They're able to help in the event of one of these accidents. Seconds count in an emergency.
The Teamsters Union, which represents GO train operators, also alleges that following an incident, its members are no longer being offered immediate mental health counseling. They first get an interview with a manager, and the number of days off paid in full after an incident has been reduced from 7 to 3. Though Alstom claims that mental health services are still available. In an email, they say operating crews are being instructed not to exit a train to protect affected employees from experiencing heightened trauma.
Came around a curve, and there he was, just standing in the middle of the tracks, and there's nothing I can do.
CTV News spoke with this GO train operator who we're calling Robin. Fearful they could lose their job, they asked we hide their identity. Robin was operating a GO train when a man standing on the tracks was struck and killed.
What do you remember from that day?
The sun sparkling through the trees, the whites of his eyes.
Alstom is contracted by Metrolinx. CTV asked the Provincial Crown Corporation if they agree with Alstom's new policy. They declined to directly answer our specific question. Robin claims to have received limited support from Alstom following the incident. Left to travel through the trauma alone, Robin contemplated suicide.
I spent hours hiding in a room in my house, shaking, not knowing how to get past each moment, each minute.
Teamsters Canada is now in the process of taking their concerns to an arbitrator. Tonight, Omar, they're calling on Alstom to reverse course.
All right, Adrian, thank you. Another person aboard the helicopter that crashed on a ski trip in northern BC a week ago has died. A mountain guide, Lewis Ainsworth, is now the fourth victim, along with the pilot, Mark McGowan, and 2 Italian tourists. 3 survivors are recovering. Members of Parliament are back in Ottawa, the first time they've returned to the House of Commons in 6 weeks. And as CTV's Judy Trin reports, the showdown on the first sitting day of the year was once again over affordability.
Oral questions.
In the first question period of the year, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre combined a jab at the carbon tax with a dig at the Prime Minister's vacation at his friend's Jamaican resort.
He wants to tax the heat and the food of Canadians. Did he pay the full carbon tax on each of the 100 tons of emissions that he put into the atmosphere?
Justin Trudeau hit back by asking how Conservatives would cut emissions, not just taxes.
The Conservative leader has simply no plan to address climate change in this country, no plan to increase the resilience of our communities in the fight against climate change.
But the high cost of living have many fuming, especially when it comes to apartments. To meet the demand from international students, the government announced today that it will extend low-cost loans to post-secondary institutions, developers, and nonprofits to build housing near campuses.
This has the potential to reduce the cost of housing for everyone in college and university towns right across the country.
But increasing supply is not enough for the NDP. Last week, the party held its strategy meeting in Edmonton, a city where police recently dismantled homeless encampments. Jagmeet Singh wants an emergency debate on housing.
Our big critique of the Liberal government is they're not focusing on affordability. One example in particular, they're using federal land to build homes. We agree with that. But those homes are not actually required to be affordable.
In Quebec, where the homeless population has nearly doubled since 2018, the Bloc wants the government to help redirect some asylum seekers to other provinces.
We have a responsibility toward the whole of our societies. We have a responsibility to receive well, to succeed.
There are signs the economy is improving, interest rates are holding, and the NDP is still willing to prop up the Liberal minority government for now, as long as it implements a national pharmacare program. Omar.
All right, Judy, thanks. And a long-awaited public inquiry into alleged foreign interference in Canadian politics also began in Ottawa today.
Our goal is to uncover the truth, whatever it may be.
On day one, the focus was on how to handle classified information. The inquiry is looking into claims that China, India, Russia, and others meddled in the 2019 and 2021 federal elections. And a parliamentary committee on medical assistance in dying tabled its final report today. It says Canada is not ready to allow people whose sole condition is mental illness to end their lives.
We agree with the conclusion that the committee has come to, that the system is at this time not ready.
Assisted dying was supposed to be expanded to the mentally ill in March. 2 Canadians have been charged in the U.S. for an alleged assassination attempt orchestrated by Iran. American prosecutors say the men with links to the Hells Angels were hired by an Iranian drug trafficker, also charged. The intended victims were both living in Maryland at the time. One of them, a defector from Iran. American officials say a hostile drone launched by an Iranian-backed militia was mistaken for a U.S. drone that was in the area at the same time. And that's why air defenses failed to stop a deadly attack on the U.S. military outpost in Jordan yesterday. As CTV's Vanessa Lee tells us, we're also learning more tonight about the 3 soldiers who were killed.
American troops were killed by enemy fire in the Middle East for the first time since the start of the Israel-Hamas war. A drone packed with explosives launched into a small American base near Jordan's border with Syria early Sunday morning, while many soldiers were still asleep.
It's fundamentally different now because we have 3 families who just got the worst possible news.
Sergeant William Rivers was 46. Specialist Brianna Moffett, 23. Specialist Kennedy Sanders' parents says she volunteered to deploy.
It's just unfair that she'll never get to realize those dreams that she had.
The U.S. is blaming Iran-backed militias and is looking at retaliation options, saying it will do what is needed to protect its troops.
We are not looking for a war with Iran. We're not looking to escalate here. This attack over the weekend was escalatory. Make no mistake about it. And it requires a response. Make no mistake about that.
Iran is denying any involvement, calling the accusations baseless. Pentagon officials say the drone flew in at the same time a U.S. drone was also landing, possibly confusing the air defense systems. The deadly attack, a major escalation of an already tense situation.
We're seeing the frustration of the people in the region about what is happening in the region and the way that they're seeing the lack of action on the part of so many and thinking that it is their responsibility to move forward and do something.
The U.S. is now facing a delicate dilemma as it walks a fine line between trying to deter further attacks while also trying to prevent the conflict from expanding. Omar.
All right, Vanessa, thank you. And the UN's aid agency in Gaza warns it could run out of money within weeks as it ran to a diplomatic storm. A number of countries have halted donations after Israel accused 12 of its employees of taking part in the October 7th attack. And here in Canada, on the National Day of Action Against Islamophobia, a leading Muslim organization is upset with the Prime Minister.
At this moment, we no longer think it's productive to speak with this Prime Minister.
It abruptly pulled out of a meeting with Justin Trudeau, saying he has failed to act on hate crimes. Several cities across Canada are marking a somber anniversary. 7 years ago today, a gunman opened fire in a mosque in Quebec City, killing 6 worshippers. There were ceremonies in Quebec City this evening, as well as in Montreal and Laval, to honor the victims and reflect on their lives. In the House of Commons today, MPs observed a moment of silence. Mounties in Manitoba believe they have finally cracked a cold case in the killing of Crystal Saunders, a 24-year-old mother whose remains were found in a ditch. The development comes after nearly 2 decades, and now a Vancouver man has been charged with second-degree murder. CTV's John Hendricks on what led police to the suspect.
17 years ago, the remains of Crystal Saunders was discovered in a ditch in St. Ambrose. She had gone missing just the day before, and by coincidence, an off-duty RCMP officer found her while checking his trap lines in the area.
The off-duty officer understood the importance of containing the scene and preserving the evidence at that crucial time.
Now, nearly 2 decades later, the evidence he helped preserve has led to an arrest.
On January 27th, the RCMP Major Crime Special Projects team arrested 42-year-old Kevin Q from Vancouver, BC.
Police say he wasn't on their radar as a suspect. That is, until DNA collected at the St. Ambrose crime scene was matched in 2014. But RCMP say the initial DNA match a decade ago was not enough for an immediate arrest.
The investigation that happened since the DNA, like I said, some very complex investigative techniques that I can't divulge here right now. They're very sensitive, but that gave us the evidence to put this over the edge to secure a charge.
The Saunders case was one of several missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls cases in Manitoba. Families Minister Nahani Fontaine says the resolution of this case will stir up mixed emotions in families.
Hope that the RCMP or the WPS are continuing to investigate these cold case long files, but also frustration that their loved one is either not found or nobody's been charged or nobody's arrested.
RCMP say Kevin Q has been in a number of provinces over the years, including Alberta, Ontario, and BC. He's currently being held in custody in BC. None of the charges against him have been tested in court. Omar?
All right, John, thank you. There are growing calls to increase supports for survivors of sexual assault tonight, a day after a member of Canada's 2018 junior hockey team turned himself in to police in London, Ontario, after allegations several members of the team attacked a woman in a hotel. CTV's Heather Butts reports.
Alex Formanton spent less than 2 hours inside a London police detachment when he surrendered Sunday. His lawyer confirming the former World Juniors player is one of several facing charges in connection to an accusation made in 2018. Adding Alex will vigorously defend his innocence and asks that people not rush to judgment without hearing all of the evidence. Advocates want the same for the alleged victim.
If this was something that maybe she didn't want made public, or she initiated a criminal process, but now she's hearing, backlash and seeing how public this is, then, I think that can be really, really difficult.
Bailey Reed works in sexual violence prevention. She says this already very public case is likely to have triggering effects on others.
Remembering that not only is this survivor, watching this and feeling the impacts, but all of the survivors in our lives are watching this and feeling impacts.
Last week, the Globe and Mail reported 5 members of Canada's 2018 World Junior Hockey Team were told to surrender to police in connection with an alleged group sexual assault of a woman in June of that year. The allegations have not been tested in court. If it does move forward, this will be a long and challenging process, says this criminologist and sexual violence survivor.
I did report my rape to the police, and I had to tell my story 14 times.
And I didn't even go to trial.
Dawn Moore says those who do go to trial will have to tell their stories repeatedly, which can be deeply re-traumatizing.
Courts were never set up for sexual assault. They were set up to protect property, and that's it. So when we get into questions of sexual assault, the whole thing gets turned on its head because the question isn't really guilt or innocence, it's consent. And we can't prove consent because it's not something that can be documented.
Authorities won't confirm the names of others involved. Investigators plan to update the case a week from today. Omar.
All right, Heather, thank you. Coming up.
It's too wet.
Buses pulled off the roads, voting delayed, and schools and businesses closed. Plus, a fierce pet owner fights to save her dog from thieves. A severe storm shut schools and slowed down life along the East Coast today in the first nor'easter of 2024. CTV's Garrett Berry on the impact.
A snow day like this in Halifax means all traffic moves a bit slower.
Good, I'm slow, but I'm making it.
And this thick, wet snow had one snowblower begging for mercy.
So too wet. It's too wet.
Schools in many parts of Nova Scotia closed all day, so did some colleges and universities. But what glanced by the Maritimes hit Newfoundland and Labrador hard. The snow fell fast and heavy in St. John's after it started, pushing road conditions downhill quickly. The city's bus service came off the road at 4 o'clock. Schools and colleges closed early, and the provincial government opened up warming centers for the homeless. Even voting in a provincial by-election was delayed until tomorrow. Some youngsters made the most of their snow day, burning off a little energy on the hills.
I'm doing backwards like this, too.
I just love it.
Why?
Because, it's so fluffy.
Winds have picked up this evening, gusting up to 70 kilometers an hour, and they're expected to stay high tomorrow, too, making these streets quite a mess. Garrett Berry, CTV News, St. John's.
Canada is adding to its medal haul 2 years after the 2022 Beijing Olympics. The Court of Arbitration for Sport has disqualified Russian figure skater Kamila Valieva for doping. The ruling means the Russians will be stripped of the gold in the figure skating's team event, and Canada, previously in 4th place, will be upgraded to bronze. Budget airline Flair is facing some turbulence, a huge tax bill. It owes $67 million to the Canada Revenue Agency, which obtained a court order allowing it to seize the company's property. Flair says it plans to pay the money and that this won't affect flights. Still ahead. Swifties root for tailor-made Super Bowl. King Charles is on the road to recovery following a procedure to treat an enlarged prostate. He was released just hours after his daughter-in-law, the Princess of Wales, was discharged from the same facility, where she had been receiving care after undergoing a planned abdominal operation for an undisclosed condition. And there's also a mystery swirling around music royalty tonight, which in turn is generating even more excitement for one of the most watched sporting events. CTV's Andrea Case explains.
After the Kansas City Chiefs won their AFC Championship game on Sunday over the Baltimore Ravens, Taylor Swift joined her boyfriend, Travis Kelce, on the football field to celebrate. Kelce and Swift went public with their relationship back in September when she first attended a game. A dozen games later, the debate is raging if she will make it to the Super Bowl. Swift resumes her wildly successful Eras Tour, which is already the highest-grossing concert tour of all time, on February 7th for 4 shows in Tokyo, which could end around 11 p.m. on Saturday, February the 10th. The Super Bowl is played at 3:30 the next day in Las Vegas. The 34-year-old has her own private jet. It takes some calculations to figure out if she can make it in time.
Figure a 12-hour flight. Maybe she leaves about an hour later. Taylor Swift could still get to the Super Bowl to Vegas about 7 or 8 p.m. Saturday night, just in time to party.
With an estimated audience of 200 million people in the U.S. alone, it is the most watched television program of the year. And Swifties just might make this the most watched Super Bowl in NFL history. Not everyone is a fan, and there has been an avalanche of complaints about the amount of attention Swift gets during televised games. The league isn't complaining. According to Apex Marketing Group, Swift has generated an equivalent brand value of $331 million for the Kansas City Chiefs and the NFL. If Taylor Swift makes it to Las Vegas, even if it's just for post-game celebrations, she'll have a lot of time to recover. Her next stop on the Eras Tour will be in Melbourne on Friday the 16th. She'll be in Toronto in November and Vancouver in December. Andrea Case, CTV News, Toronto.
And before the break, a wild moment in Los Angeles caught on camera. This woman tried to stop thieves from stealing her dog by jumping onto the hood of their getaway car. She's okay, but the dog nappers drove off with her Frenchie. The breed is often targeted by criminals because they can fetch over $10,000. After the break, a big hockey card score worth millions and found in a basement. We leave you tonight with an incredible discovery. In a Regina basement, collectibles collecting dust worth a fortune. CTV's Allison Bamford explains why a big payday is in the cards.
We weren't exactly sure one of these existed.
On the surface, this looks like a 45-year-old cardboard box, but inside, some of the most coveted hockey cards in history.
We've never seen them, this fresh.
16 boxes of OPC hockey cards from the 1979-80 season. Wayne Gretzky's rookie year valued close to $3 million.
It's possible the case could have sold for $20, $25.
The case was buried in a Regina home office behind stacks of other collectibles only recently discovered. The original collector wants to remain anonymous.
It's just a blue-collar collector who happened to accidentally not open one of his boxes.
Playing the odds, there could be about 20 Gretzky cards inside.
Wayne Gretzky's rookie card isn't that difficult to find. It's difficult to find in perfect condition.
It's the holy grail among collectors, and those in the industry hope it reignites a lost passion.
Next to Connor McDavid, Connor Bedard is going to be the next chance for people to ever have something like this happen again.
The case hit auction Sunday. The current bid is hovering over the $1 million mark, and if it sells for as much as it's valued, experts say this will be the highest price ever paid for an unopened item at auction. Right now, the record is $1.8 million for a 1986 Fleer basketball case that included Michael Jordan's rookie cards. Allison Bamford, CTV News, Regina.
And that is a snapshot of this Monday. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. Good night, and see you tomorrow.
CTV National News, Canada's #1 newscast.